Why should you strive for success and find meaning in this world existentially when you could just be a good Christian and live a life of peace and just be a nice monk that has spiritual growth? Why should you get your meaning, your values externally through God rather than internally? And that's quite a difficult question, but these are the arguments for it. So the first argument is, well, God is dead anyway. And I looked into this a bit more. He says it's called The Gay Science, and there's this nice illustration about this, where there's this madman wandering around with this lantern at night, and he's going, where's God, I can't find him. And then all these atheists around him are all laughing at him, saying, you're wasting your time, ha ha ha, what are you doing, you madman? And then he's like, you don't understand what you've done, guys. Like, you're going to become nihilistic. You don't understand. This is the biggest question on earth. This isn't nothing. You don't understand what's going to happen centuries to come. And from this, Nietzsche says, okay, so if you lose your meaning from a collective, he then invents something called the Übermensch, which is to embrace the will to power, to get our meaning internally through values. And this is the solution to the void of nihilism. So I've explained about God was killed by science because science had was deemed more of an important truth than religion. So there's also a side point to this that I thought, which is quite deep. It's like, well, right now, are we living in an age where love is about to die through technology, the decreasing connection, and through hedonism? That's a very deep idea. But I would argue that, well, it's a decline. It's not a complete death. Nietzsche says it really sharply and to strike him to be really controversial, but it's just a decline. And yeah, I mean, if both God and love are dead, then you're just a robot. It's a horrible reality. But yeah, that's his first argument, that God is dead anyway. The second argument is that religion is for the weak. So very controversial. And he says, life in God is the most elaborate and ultimate fear of truth. It's a life that gives comfort to suffering. There's no striving for greatness in this life. You neglect heaven on earth for a chance at heaven in the afterlife. Religion recycles old dogmas and encourages herd mentality to create slave morality. So what that means is it rewards some submissiveness, obedience, complacency, the nice guy syndrome, rather than like confidence, power, and accomplishment. To see the stars as not above you, but that you are a part of them. Which, yeah, that's an interesting metaphor. And as I said, this Übermensch, the opposite side of things, it embraces life fully, like even the struggles, and finds joy in existence while needing an afterlife to make it worthwhile. Almost like this world is just kind of a waiting room for an afterlife. So they're the two main arguments. Yeah, what's your thoughts?
It is interesting. The idea that, I think it was Karl Marx that said religion is the opioid of the masses. It's this drug that gives us some sort of narrative to think about our lives so we aren't hit with the crushing weight of the fact that we're just some like mortal individual in some massive impersonalized biological process, and we're just destined to just die and be a sort of measly part of the larger life of the universe. And we need some sort of meaning, and religion provides us with that. It's a package. It's like a package holiday for how to live life rather than going and exploring the world yourself, I guess. Whereas, Nietzsche's perspective of creating your own values, I do like. I like that idea that I can decide who my God is and what that is. You know, I guess maybe a nice way of thinking about it is when people ask me, do I believe in God? The answer is yes, but with the caveat of I don't know what it is yet. You know, I know it's there. I know there's something divine to life. I know there's something deeper and more meaningful. I know that there's some real love, some real truth, some real divinity and power and mystery in this life. And I know that it's there, but I don't quite know what it is yet. Whereas religion goes, this exists and we know what it is and you should believe in it. I'm more like, I do believe in it, but I don't know what it is. And that process of figuring out what it is, that's a joyful part of my own spiritual discovery. But then I'm not criticizing or disregarding religion. I think it's great for getting people onto a better narrative than nothing matters and there's nothing is more moral or less moral. There is a way of being that is better than another way of being. And religion is a set of instructions for how to be better, be a better human in the world. And it has its imperfections and the human ego gets involved and all that kind of stuff. But it's positive in the end. So yeah, I don't know if that really answers your question.
No, it's good thoughts. And it is a hard question. I've been thinking about this a lot. I just kind of like sit in the coffee shop and then just let my mind wander for half an hour. And I connected it to, well, what the solution, as you'd kind of expect, is to balance the drill sergeant and the Alan Watts. So try and do a bit of both. But let's bring another question that stems from this. A big part of it is, do we optimize for unity, where we've got all these people believing in the same thing and with all the same values, or do we allow diversity with all these different values and all these different beliefs of how to live life? And the best case scenario is, well, if you imagine a country where we want everyone to be united in one religion, or do we want a country where everyone's diverse and have their own ways of being? And I think the answer is a balance of both because, well, the advantage of being united is we have common goals, people get along more because they've got things in common. There's probably less ego, there's less selfishness. But if everyone thinks in the same way, then you don't get new perspectives, you don't get innovation. However, too much diversity, then you're very individualistic. Everyone's just in it for themselves, but there's more of a quest for the truth, which I think is quite important, than just accepting it and going along with whatever the common notion is. And it's like, oh shit, my thing turned off. Okay, I'm back. It's like, the thing I was thinking about the debate that we had with those feminists, and the thing that I really liked about it was a quest for truth. And even with like both parties disagreeing, I think that quest for truth is so very, very important. And I personally like this idea with coming up with your own values and sharing them, because, well, it's like I like to figure things out for myself. I like this. I like the I like the Frank Sinatra thing of I did it my way.
Yeah, this sounds unrelated, but I don't think it is. I'll try and bring it round. But last night actually, I was talking about creativity, and who have I stole this idea from? Who's that guy that Huberman's friends with that like you like that is like he gives his opinion professionally on music? What's his name? Rick Rubin.
He did. Oh, Rick Rubin. Yeah.
The guy that, let me just Google Rick.
Yeah, it is.
I think it was them, but I could be chatting shit. But anyway, they said creativity can only happen with the right amount of limitation. So you don't want so much limitation that you can't come up with new ideas, right? That you don't want a world where, things are the way they are and they will always be that way and no one should think differently. Think, George Orwell, 1984, controlling government state ways of thinking. That level of authoritarian use of power, right? That's not what we want in creativity. We don't want maximum limitation, but we also don't want no limitation, because then you've got no art form. You've got everything. You've got the chaos of infinity. And how can you create something new out of that? It's like, it's not possible. It's like you can't even grasp anything and manipulate it because it's everything. There's no limitation. It's just chaotic potential everywhere. That's too much. You want the right amount of limitation. You want to limit yourself to your craft, which might be paint and the canvas. It might be the keys of a piano. It might be the capacities of verbal articulation, right? Limitation within that one specific field. But within that limitation, you're able to express new ideas and put different ideas together with different novel connections and all of that. That's what creativity is. It requires a level of limitation. And so, back to your idea about belief systems, we don't want no limitation. We don't want people looning around sort of claiming that reality is any way that they feel. Right? There are fundamental truths to the world, but we also don't want maximal limitation, like this is the way you should think about reality. We don't want that either. We want, like the creatives, we want the right amount of limitation. We want to be educated on the fact that killing someone probably isn't good, raping people isn't good, stealing from people isn't good. Right? There are fundamental moral truths about what it means to be a good human, but who your God is and the nature of them and where they come from and whether psychedelic drugs are religious or whether they're just brain chemistry or whether religion is a load of fiction or whether it has some profound mythological truth to it, those opinions, you can come up to that on your own. I think as long as you're not harming people, which is like the necessary degree of limitation on the way you can think and the way you can be in the world, as long as you're ticking those boxes that you don't make the world worse than it currently is, then within that limitation, you have the creativity to do the things and think about the things and believe the things that you want to do. And that is that Goldilocks point of faith, of belief. And human beings, we've got it wrong in the past. We swing on this pendulum, you know, but as long as, like you say, we're trying to pursue the right truths, because it's also, the pursuit of truth is not like a dogmatic, like, use of power. It's an investigation. You know, when we had that conversation with Isla and the other bloke, we agreed on a lot of things. Like the limitations were set. You know, we both agree that people being like abused is not good. People being taken the freedom of their opportunities away is not good, right? We both agree on that. But within that, of like, well, what's too much of a certain thing? What's too much free thinking in terms of this stuff? What does it really mean to be a good man and a good woman? What does it mean to be a good father and a good mother? And can they be the same thing? And all that. Those questions within that limitation of, right, abuse is not good, harming people is not good. But where's the line of how we create a great world for our children and our relationships? Those questions within those fundamental truths are interesting and important to investigate. So that was a big ramble, but I feel like I'm in the same conversation as you.
I like it. It's an interesting conclusion that we need limits, we don't need limits.
You need the right amount of limitation. Yeah.
And that's the line between like chaos and order, I feel like.
Exactly.
That's exactly it, yeah.